Points, lines, planes, and more. So the word geometry comes from the measurement of the Earth. Specifically, geo means Earth, and metry means measurement. So we're going to be talking about a bunch of visual things, and those visual things, in order to describe them, we need to come up with names to describe them clearly. There are a few words that are the simplest terms in math or in geometry, and they're undefined terms. Point is a zero-dimensional location that does not take up space. So you can think of that as there is a point. A line is a straight, unbroken path, one-dimensional path with infinite length. And we usually write it with arrows at the end to show that it's infinitely long. We can't draw infinite length, but it'll stop. So we have to stop it somewhere. But the arrows at the end are part of how we show that it's actually a line and not just a finite length. And a plane is a flat, unbroken, two-dimensional surface with infinite area, like the floor if you extend the floor forever, or a wall if you extend that wall up, down, left, right forever. And we can't draw that perfectly, but what we will usually do is draw a rectangle to represent that. So if we wanted to describe points, we use them, we call points by capital letters. So there are a bunch of capital letters in this diagram: A, H, G, E, D, F, C, and B all refer to points. There are plenty more points in the diagram. However, those are the interesting points, and we sometimes refer to interesting points as vertices. The single of vertices is a single vertex. So you could say G is an interesting vertex. It's a point. For lines, we have multiple ways of naming lines. We can either describe them with lowercase letters like this L, or we can say that we can call that line, not AB. We could call that line AG by saying that we're starting at A, going through G, and that's infinitely long. Another line in this figure is, say, line BC. So that line is line BC. We would not call HE a line. We'll get to that later. But AC is also a line. So we always use two capital letters unless we have a name for the line that's a single lowercase letter. For planes, we can either use a cursive M or a cursive capital letter for a plane, but usually we'll use three non-collinear points, and we'll get to collinear later. But for example, we could call this ABC. That refers to this plane. I could call this plane N. I could call it HGD. I could call it GED. There's a bunch of different names that I could call it. You just need to know that I can't call it HGE. So I use 3 points that are on the plane that aren't going to be on the same line. Defined terms are based off of the undefined terms. A line segment is the shortest path between 2 points. And a ray, I should probably draw a line segment. So the shortest path between A and B here is that straight line segment. Apologies because I'm not drawing perfectly straight. I guess it would look more like this. Those 2 dots at the end are just for us to see that that's where it starts, where it ends. Those dots aren't actually going to take up space. Similarly, for a ray, it starts from one point and continues across half a line in one direction. So it stops there, or you could say it starts there, but it continues forever in one of the two directions. So those are rays. And one thing that students get wrong very often is describing lines incorrectly. So if I want to talk about the whole line, if I want to talk about the whole thing, then that's talking about the line, and we would call that line something like line AB. If I only want to talk about a ray, well, then that would be instead starting from A and going toward B. That would be ray AB. If I wanted to talk about just the segment, the piece between A and B, then I would say that it is segment AB. And lastly, length. So that's not talking about the location or anything like that. It's just talking about the number. If I just want to talk about how long is it, then I say AB. So these four things are all different. I do expect you to know the difference between them. More definitions. Collinear means on the same line, and coplanar means on the same plane. Co just means with, so collinear is on the same line, coplanar is on the same plane. So, for example, you could say A, G, and F are collinear. A, G, and F are collinear. There's another set of 3 points that are collinear. H, G, and E are collinear. In terms of coplanar, you can say that H, G, E, and D are coplanar. Now, it's worth pointing out that just because things are, you don't see the plane doesn't mean they're, or see the line doesn't mean they're not collinear. I can still say that um, BH are collinear. B and H are collinear. Because I could draw a line that goes through the two of them. I should probably make it a dotted line back here because it's going to go behind plane M. It will go behind plane M. But we can describe those two as collinear. We could also say, and this is more interesting, A, G, F, and C are coplanar. Because if you imagine the line going through A, G, and F, and then extending that out to C, then that gives you a plane that you could describe. So that's what collinear and coplanar mean. Thank you.